Right now, 2 billion people are watching the same thing. Not approximately 2 billion, not roughly 2 billion, 2 billion. That is 1 in every 4 humans alive on this planet, watching the same 22 men kick the same ball across the same patch of grass. And every single one of them will feel something at the same moment. Not similar feelings, the same feeling, synchronized, across continents, across languages, across every cultural and political difference that normally makes humans impossible to coordinate. No government has ever achieved this. No religion has ever achieved this. No war, no disaster, no scientific discovery has ever produced synchronized emotional response at this scale simultaneously. The World Cup has done it every 4 years since 1930, and nobody has ever asked the obvious question: what is it actually doing to us? To understand why this is strange, you need to understand something about how human brains are built. Your brain was not designed for groups of 2 billion. It was designed for groups of approximately 150 people. That is the number Robin Dunbar, a British anthropologist, calculated in 1992 as the cognitive limit of stable human social relationships. 150 people. That is the number of individuals whose names you know, whose relationships with each other you can track, and who you feel genuine social obligation toward. Beyond 150, the brain starts using shortcuts. It stops treating people as individuals and starts treating them as categories. Us, them, same, different. This is not a flaw in the brain. It is an extremely efficient solution to a very hard problem. The problem of living in a world with 8 billion other humans when you only have processing power for 150 of them. The shortcut works by attaching your individual identity to a group identity. You stop being just you. You become a member of something. And suddenly, you have access to feelings of solidarity, loyalty, pride, and threat response that extend far beyond the 150 people you actually know. The World Cup is the most powerful activation of this system ever engineered. Not by accident, by the specific structure of how it is designed. Consider what the World Cup actually is as a structure. Take 8 billion humans, divide them into groups based on where they were born, give each group a color, a symbol, and a song. Create a series of competitions in which one group must defeat another. Repeat until one group remains. That structure is not natural. It is not ancient. National football teams, as organized entities, only became widespread in the late 19th and early 20th century. Before that, nobody had a national football team because nobody had thought to organize one. The creation of national teams was, in many cases, a deliberate political act. Governments in Europe and South America specifically promoted football as a tool for building national identity in populations that spoke different languages, held different regional loyalties, and had no strong sense of shared nationhood. In Brazil in the 1930s, President Getúlio Vargas used the national football team explicitly as an instrument of national unification. In Italy under Mussolini, the 1934 World Cup was used as a showcase of national strength and fascist ideology. The structure was designed to make people feel something specific, belonging to something larger than themselves, identity attached to geography of birth rather than to values, choices, or relationships. The experiment started before anyone called it an experiment. In 2010, researchers at the University of Chichester in England ran a study during the World Cup. They measured testosterone levels in fans watching their national team play. Not players, fans. People sitting in front of televisions or in stadiums doing nothing physically active. When the team won, testosterone levels in male fans rose by an average of 20%. When the team lost, testosterone levels dropped by a comparable amount, the same hormonal response that occurs in a male animal who has just won or lost a physical confrontation with a rival. The brain does not distinguish between a conflict you participated in and a conflict your group participated in. Victory and defeat are processed through the same biological machinery, regardless of whether you were on the field. This is why the man in the bar, who has never played professional football in his life, says, "We won," not "they won." We. His brain is not using a figure of speech. It is reporting a biological reality. His nervous system experienced that win. His testosterone rose. His brain released dopamine. He was in the game in every neurological sense that matters. And researchers have found this effect is not limited to testosterone. Cortisol, the stress hormone, follows the same pattern. Heart rate follows the same pattern. A study published in the British Medical Journal found that the cardiac arrest rate in the Netherlands rose by 50% on the day the Dutch national team lost to Argentina in the 1998 World Cup. Not for players, for fans watching television. The emotional experience of a football match is not separate from your physical health. It is your physical health. Here is the part that researchers call genuinely unusual. When 2 billion people watch the same event simultaneously, something happens that has no precedent in the history of the species. Emotional synchrony at global scale. In normal human experience, emotional synchrony happens in small groups. Shared laughter, shared fear, shared grief. It bonds those groups together. It is one of the primary mechanisms by which social trust is built. The feeling that the person next to you felt what you felt at the same moment creates a sense of shared experience that is extremely difficult to manufacture artificially and extremely powerful when it occurs naturally. The World Cup manufactures it at 2 billion simultaneous participants. Researchers at University College London, studying crowd behavior during major sporting events, found that shared emotional experiences, even between strangers, produced measurable increases in self-reported feelings of social connection and trust, not just toward people in the same room, toward members of the same group broadly defined. After a World Cup win, studies in multiple countries have found temporary measurable increases in social trust, charitable giving, and cooperative behavior among the winning nation's population. People are literally nicer to each other for days after their team wins, not because they decided to be, because the shared experience of winning temporarily dissolves some of the social barriers that normally keep people from trusting strangers. The experiment is producing real changes in real behavior at national scale. But the same mechanism that produces cooperation within the group produces something else toward the group on the other side. In 1954, the psychologist Muzaffar Sharif ran an experiment at a summer camp in Oklahoma called the Robbers Cave Experiment. He took 2 groups of boys who had never met, housed them separately, gave them group names and symbols, and introduced competition between them. Within days, the boys were raiding each other's cabins, burning each other's flags, and refusing to eat in the same room. They had never met before the experiment began. The conflict was entirely a product of the group structure Sharif had created. The World Cup runs this experiment at global scale. The same brain system that makes you feel genuine pride when your country scores makes you feel genuine hostility toward the country on the other side, not because of anything those individuals did, because they are wearing a different color. Studies of fan behavior during major tournaments consistently find increases in intergroup hostility, online abuse directed at opposing fans, and in some documented cases, physical violence following high-stakes matches. The 1969 war between Honduras and El Salvador, which killed approximately 3,000 people, was triggered in part by riots following a World Cup qualifying match between the two nations. Not caused by the football alone, but the football provided the synchronized emotional activation that tipped existing tensions into open conflict. The same mechanism, cooperation inside the group, hostility toward the group outside, amplified to the largest scale ever tested. There is one more layer to this experiment that almost nobody talks about: the referees. In 2007, researchers Alan Neville and colleagues published a study in which they showed professional football referees footage of 47 controversial incidents from real matches. Half the referees watched the footage with crowd noise, half watched the footage in silence. The referees who watched with crowd noise made decisions that favored the home team significantly more often than the referees who watched in silence. Same footage, same incidents, same referees, different sound environment. The crowd noise was activating the same conformity bias that operates in every human social environment. The brain reads the emotional response of the group around it as social information. When the crowd reacts to a challenge with outrage, the referee's brain interprets that outrage as evidence that the challenge was foul. Not consciously, below conscious processing. The referees were not corrupt. They were human, which means they were running the same brain software as every other person in the stadium. The experiment has a built-in bias toward whatever outcome the largest group in the room wants, and the largest group in the room is always the home nation. This is not a flaw in the World Cup. It is a feature of human biology operating at scale. Consider the timing. Every 4 years. Not every year, not every 2 years. 4. There is a reason this interval works, and it is not logistical. 4 years is long enough for the emotional memory of the previous tournament to fade from acute experience to nostalgic reference. Long enough for a new generation of players to have emerged. Long enough for the narrative of national identity to reset around new heroes and new storylines. Short enough that the participants from the previous tournament are still alive. Short enough that the emotional investment of fans has not fully dissipated. The 4-year cycle maximizes what behavioral economists call anticipatory utility, the pleasure of looking forward to something. Studies have consistently found that anticipatory utility is often greater than the utility of the experience itself. The months leading up to a World Cup produce measurable increases in positive emotional states in populations of countries that have qualified. People are happier before the tournament than during it. The experiment is designed to generate maximum emotional investment across the maximum number of humans possible, and it resets every 4 years before the investment can fully decay. No one designed all of this intentionally. That is the strangest part. The World Cup is not the product of a single mind or a single plan. It emerged from 100 years of overlapping decisions by football associations, governments, broadcasters, sponsors, and 2 billion individual fans, each making their own choices about what to care about. But the result is a system that manipulates human psychology at global scale with a precision that no deliberately designed experiment could legally or ethically replicate. You cannot run a study on 2 billion people. You cannot randomly assign national identities. You cannot measure the real-world behavioral consequences of synchronized global emotional experience, except here, every 4 years, for free. Researchers who study group behavior, identity formation, social trust, and collective emotion have been quietly using World Cup data for decades, precisely because nothing else provides a comparable natural experience. The subjects do not know they are subjects. The experiment has no ethics committee, and it has been running, with refinements, since 1930. You are watching a football match right now, or you watched one recently, or you will watch one before this tournament ends, and something will happen. A goal, a save, a moment that makes 2 billion people feel the same thing at the same moment, and your testosterone will shift, and your heart rate will change, and you will say we, not they, we. And you will mean it, because the experiment worked. It always works. It has been working for 100 years. And the most remarkable thing about it is not its scale. It is that knowing this changes nothing. You will still watch. You will still feel it. So will everyone else.